If you follow all 5 tips in this video, you will see improvement in your Overwatch 2 games. Hey guys, Zombie here, and welcome to my first Overwatch 2 video. Now today we're going to go over 5 tips that will help you improve in pretty much every aspect of the game. I ordered them, so towards the end, the tips are a lot easier, and I think make probably a much bigger impact than the ones at the beginning, but they're all very useful. If you follow all of them, you will improve. If this video helps you, please subscribe and send it to your friend who really sucks at Overwatch that you always play with. I haven't uploaded in a while, so Susan Wojcicki was really getting on me about getting people to watch the videos again. So our first tip is really quite simple and something you've probably heard a million times, but have you actually done it yet? Really take a look at your sensitivity settings. I know on console it's a bit different than on PC, but find something you're comfortable with, something where you can track an enemy. There are plenty of custom game codes that you can plug in to just practice your aim on moving targets, targets standing still, different drills you can run. If you just look up any sort of drills, you'll be able to find it on Google or on YouTube. I'll leave the code on screen for the one that I personally use, but there are so many that you can find one that you find helps you the most and stick to it. I don't want you to hear that tip and think, yeah, that's smart, but I'm not going to do it, because this really will probably be the best way to improve your mechanical skill, which eventually has to catch up. You can only have so much game sense and so much, knowledge to push you forward in your ranks without being able to then aim, because if you can't aim, you can't deal damage. If you can't deal damage, your team's going to lose fights. Speaking of game sense, that brings us into our next tip, tip number 2. Don't dive into the enemy team without a way out. There's niche situations where you can, but I'll get to that in a second. For example, if you're playing Genji, don't dash in with your blade, because then you can't dash out. Unless you're almost certain you can secure a kill, or there's a different way for you to get out of the engagement. If you dive and die, now your team's in a 5v4, and as you start climbing the ranks, this is just unwinnable or very hard to win for most teams that have 4 members instead of 5. And don't think tanks are exempt from this. If you jump in as Winston or go in with your rockets as D.Va, and you end up in the middle of their whole team, and your whole team isn't with you, you're going to have a really hard time. You're probably going to die, and it's going to really swing the engagement. Now, the niche moments where this does make sense is when you're in higher ranks and you have, everyone's talking and you coordinate a big dive where everyone dives, your whole team is diving their backline, or maybe you're all jumping on the payload, you're trying to, in overtime, which is another situation, but as a general rule, don't jump into the enemy team and go in the middle of all of them without having a plan to get out. Now, if you do find yourself in the middle of the enemy team and you really don't have a way out, most people will back into their team. But when you think about it, you really should be running behind the enemy team. If you know you're going to die anyway, run behind them. Force the enemy to turn around instead of shooting at you, walking back towards your team, because then if they miss you, they might shoot your teammate behind you. If you run behind them, your team can still deal damage, but at least one of their team has to turn around to shoot you, or you just live, which they wouldn't let happen. But try to make it more advantageous if you know you're going to die anyway. The third tip I have for you guys today is to try to stay away from just looking at who's meta right now and just playing those characters. If you see that Sojourn is doing really well in Season 1 right now, but you're not very good at Sojourn and you're playing DPS, pick someone you're more comfortable with. If you're a really good Reaper, then play Reaper. If you're a really good Hanzo, play Hanzo. You should have a few heroes that you like to play with, but don't always just play someone because they're good, especially if you're not really enjoying their playstyle, you're not really getting used to it, you're not getting great results, but you have other heroes that you're good at that might be B tier, C tier. It doesn't really matter what tier it is. If you perform well on a hero, then don't worry about where it is in the meta. Try to ignore it to a reasonable extent. We're getting towards the last 2 tips, and these 2 are probably the biggest 2 things you can do, especially at low ranks to mid ranks, to really improve your game. So for number 4, play every hero in quick play at least 2 or 3 times. Now this is going to take a few hours most likely, but in order to be able to win against a hero, you should understand how they work and how they try to play off of their abilities. If you've never played them, it's hard for you to know unless you do extensive research, but you might as well just play them yourself at that point. Why are you doing research instead of just learning through first-hand experience? Why are you having someone else tell you? As a matter of fact, the gameplay you're watching right now, I placed in competitive open queue right when the game came out, placed bronze 5, as did many people. I'm not a bronze tank, and these bronze players don't recognize that they shouldn't be shooting my Zarya bubble. I'm constantly at high charge, and really just ripping through their entire team constantly. Now, if these players had played Zarya a couple times, they would know, play around the bubble. If she has the bubble up, don't necessarily just charge her up for no reason. And I would say do this for every single role, not just the role you play. I'm thinking about making a beginner/intermediate guide for most of the heroes in the game, Leave a comment below if that's something you'd be interested in watching, and if not, give me a suggestion of something else you would like to see in Overwatch 2. And while you're down there, just subscribe. You're almost through the video. That'd help me out a lot. Susan's really upset with me, and that'd make her less upset. Now we have the biggest tip of all of them, and it's gonna sound so silly, but especially if you're playing comp games, please go into team chat and comm with your team. Talk to each other. The amount of games you would probably win with comms versus not having comms is more than you'd expect. Someone who is really good mechanically, can hit their shots, but doesn't comm, generally is a lot worse to have on your team than someone who is okay to good, but has great comms. Oh, Reaper's teleporting behind us, and they even maybe ping on the map, which is another thing you have an option of. You can't force other people to comm, but there is the ping system, which isn't nearly as good, but it's something. But what you can control is if you comm. And the more people who comm, then the better your team is most likely going to be. And this kind of feeds into the fourth tip with playing every hero, but if you know what their ults do, you know roughly, when people are going to be charged with their ults, what abilities they have, you can better play around them, you can better make calls to your team. Oh, Ana probably has her sleep dart up again in a second or two. So, if someone's going to ult, they might not ult anymore because the Ana might be able to just sleep dart them and then your whole ult's negated. If you put all five of these tips are very simple. The first one and second one are a little bit more difficult because they require more effort. But the last three are pretty much just mindset, and I feel like those last three are huge, especially the last two. But, of course, working on your aim and working on your game sense is always going to be good. You can even watch some like Overwatch League if you really wanted to try to learn some more game sense, but then you also have to make sure you apply it by playing. Again, ties back to playing all the characters again, so it all kind of comes full circle. These tips, if you follow all five, you will improve. That's going to be it for me for now. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment below what you want to see next, and subscribe.